Here we are in a scene which used to be at the very heart of Britain's industrial heritage, but has a new future which is being carved out day by day. And we have Ben Houchen, Tees Valley Mayor, and Shadow Chancellor Mel Stride. What has to happen for this place to actually fulfil its true potential and become the dynamo for jobs and prosperity that you dream it will be?
Well, it's already happening because we've already got the planning in place, which is a huge problem for large parts of the country. We've had huge supports from the Conservative government who helped us get rid of the old steelworks, start to prepare the new land. We've got the Freeport, which again the Conservative government delivered back in 2021, which has just catalysed. This is a place where, better than anywhere else in the country, this is a great place to come and invest, and from my point of view, to create jobs and put money in people's pockets to look after themselves and their families.
We've got some budget looming. Now, what are your greatest hopes and fears in terms of how the wider economic situation could change to make places like this thrive?
This is a beacon of hope in our country at the moment because obviously the Labour government has really messed up the economy, putting up those taxes on businesses, killing growth, stoking inflation, borrowing lots of money, spending lots of money in a way that's kept interest rates higher for longer. And overall, of course, we're heading now into the autumn and the budget expecting tax rises, which is just the reverse of what we need to be doing and the reverse of what has been going on here over the years, which is to make doing business easier, getting the red tape out of the way, making sure that the tax regime is right, making sure that the planning process can be speeded up to do all the wonderful things that we're seeing being created on this site here in Teesside.
And Ben, if Rachel Reeves was here with Sir Keir Starmer and they said, what can we do to clear away the obstacles? What are the biggest challenges that they could dynamite?
Well, for me, I think it's quite straightforward. If they just did what they said they were going to do, rather than saying one thing and doing the opposite, I have absolutely agreement that we need to go for growth. We need to make it easier for people to invest, people to start their own businesses. We need to make it easier for businesses to employ people. And while the government say they're doing that, they end up doing the opposite. They raise national insurance, making it harder to recruit people. They put up people's taxes. Business property relief is stopping family businesses from growing and investing in their businesses and recruiting people. So, and deregulation, getting all of the blockers out of the way, getting the quangos out of the way that stop development, stop the planning, stop the investment in this country. They're actually strengthening some of those regulations, giving more powers to the likes of Natural England, making it even more difficult to deliver the housing and the investment we need as a country. So I'd just like them to stick to their word, and if they did that, then I'd be happy. But unfortunately, they seem to be going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And what do you find is the biggest challenge when you're trying to attract investment? What if you had that mythical dynamite, what would you blow up first?
For us, we're in a very fortunate position that planning, we're able to cut through. We have a very pro-development policy. We're able to manage what is a very difficult thing. I think for the country, planning is probably a huge issue. But I think for us, our biggest challenge is energy, cost of energy. So we can give them the sites, we can give them the planning, we can tell them all the amazing things, we can give them the Freeport and the benefits that come with it. But if we're not competitive on an energy pricing basis and they can get that energy pricing cheaper elsewhere, they'll go and spend their money elsewhere. We've got to be competitive from an energy point of view. It's energy that drives the economy. And if they don't sort that out, if they don't reduce bills, not just on people, but on business, and they make it competitive and we have more generation that powers the future economy, then this country is not going to be able to move forward and create the growth that it needs to put money in people's pockets.
2 weeks ago, we had the forecast from NISA that we could be heading towards a black hole of potentially £51 billion. How does that threaten the prosperity of regions like this in terms of, the tax rises that's been suggested by the think tank? And how do we get out of the hole?
Well, that's like saying somebody's driven a car into the brick wall at 100 miles an hour and then giving me the steering wheel and saying, well, what are you going to do now? We would not have got into this position in the first place. We would not have been doing all the things that Ben has highlighted, like increasing taxes on businesses, which stifles all that development we want. We wouldn't have been talking down the economy in the way the government did when they came to office. We wouldn't have been stoking inflation and keeping interest rates higher than they would otherwise have been. Where we are at the moment is a very precarious situation, and the markets are going to be watching very closely because this big black hole is going to have to be filled, we're almost certain, by tax increases. Those tax increases in turn will be a further brake on the economy. So we're not going to be getting that kind of growth that really is the answer to the country moving forward. So it's a very difficult time, and of course great uncertainty over the summer. A cruel summer of uncertainty as people are waiting and businesses are waiting to see what's going to happen.
As well as the major corporation taxes, there's also individual employers. They've been living now with national insurance increases. How's that affecting your efforts to just revive prosperity and well-paying jobs here?
Well, we're seeing in the local supply chains in local businesses that they are cutting jobs. People in government do not appreciate the fact that raising national insurance is not, some sort of free tap of money that they can turn on as and when they need it. It has an impact on jobs. Businesses realise that taking on somebody is going to cost them even more. That means they need to be even more productive to be able to justify taking on those people. Government don't recognise that. They don't understand that sending signals of tax rises puts people off. The productive element of the economy is now moving abroad, and even down to the markets judging Rachel Reeves in the coming budget. They're already judging her. Look at gilt rates. Look at the yields that people get. That has an impact on the real economy, and government don't get that. They don't get that. Why would an investor go and risk trying to make 8, 9, 10%, sometimes less, when they can go and stick it in a government gilt at 5, 6%? Understanding that process, seeing that the construction industry is falling through the floor for that exact reason, they've got to get a grip of it and realise that the markets are already passing judgment on them.
You're both politicians at the end of the day, and this is really ground central for the electoral prospects of whoever will form the next government. We'll be finding ourselves in a general election sooner than we can believe, I'm sure. Reform obviously have big ambitions in the red wall, used to as well, and of course Labour want to make it the permanent red wall. How do you see off the challenges that you face in these areas?
One of the things is the economy. So we have got to be positioned, as we always historically have been, as the grown-ups in the room when it comes to the economy. We have got fiscal responsibility in our DNA, and what we're seeing is a Labour government that is messing up the economy in the way that we've described, and we're seeing Reform who are peddling fantasy economics, claiming that you can do all sorts of good things in life without explaining how you're going to deliver them, how you're going to pay for them. And we are going to be that grown-up party that is going to show a way forward in the way that Ben has described, tackling the real issues that we face as a country, but doing it in that fiscally responsible way.
Ben, you've won 3 elections, including good times for the Conservatives and in pretty apocalyptic times. Yeah, how do you continue to keep that trust, I suppose, that's been built up, but extend it to the wider party?
I honestly think, and maybe it's a very simplistic thing to say, but politics is not a complicated game. If you're going to do something and you're going to promise to do something, do it. Follow through on your promises. Keep to your word. We, sadly, I think at the moment are living through quite a low trust point in politics, and actually we're quite a low trust society at the moment. And I think it's obligatory on our leaders, including politicians, to stick to their word, which is why, like I say, if this Labour government stuck to their word, I think they'd be in a better place, but they're doing the opposite. So I've always said, if I'm going to do something, people can trust me to deliver on it, and I've always done that. I will only promise something if I deliver it. And then, sadly, that's where we are in politics. It's a low bar, just doing what you say you're going to do, and that's seen me right for the last 3 elections.
What's the nightmare scenario then for the autumn budget?
For me, it's further tax increases, a lack of realisation that businesses and individuals are already shouldering too much from a tax burden point of view, and a increasingly left-wing Labour government that do not want to consider spending cuts. Because that's the other thing that the think tank said. It didn't just talk about tax rises. It said there's a £51 billion black hole that it needs to plug with either tax rises or spending cuts. And what's really interesting is the Labour Party haven't breathed a word about potential spending cuts, which again, as any household will know, if you spend beyond your means and you rack up that credit card bill, at some point the bank is going to come knocking. And that's the same thing for this Labour government as well.
As Ben says, they don't get a grip on spending. They've already not got a grip on the welfare budget. They should be not spending so much on benefits. They should be getting people back into work, which is something we had a very clear plan for. I'm also worried about the tax increases driving more wealth creators away from our country, when we should be the kind of society and economy where people are kicking the door down to try and get in here to invest, exactly as we're seeing here on Teesside today.